responsibility. Next, our next report is the district zone reset. We have two of our chiefs, Dr. Stephen Gutierrez, our Chief Operating Officer, and Dr. Amy Schindewolf, our Chief of Staff, that will present a very important report to the board tonight. Before they begin, I want to extend a very, very big thank you. Two simple words, but they mean a lot. Thank you to everybody, not just the people presenting, not just cabinet, but to executive team, principals that were at our countless meetings, staff members, parents that did volunteer for this opportunity and that did also come to discuss a situation that's important. I think when you talk about moving families in a fast growth district, there are always some challenges that come with that. So I am continuously grateful for the strength and the resiliency of our district and our community in supporting change and understanding that as a fast growth district, this is part of what comes with that. It's often been said that the most difficult school to add is a second high school. I will tell you that a third high school, third comprehensive, because we know we have more than three currently, having an additional on top of our Tomball Star Academy and our P-TECH, adding a third comprehensive comes with challenges. And this was a district zone reset. And so I'm grateful to the work that has been put into this, the thought, listening, and the board, of course, for listening to public feedback and concerns and comments from our constituents, our parents, our stakeholders, and our business owners. So, Dr. Schindewolf, take it away.
President McStravick, Dr. Z, and members of the board, tonight we come to you to provide an overview of the District Zone Reset, or as we call it, DZR. This is a process that we have been going through for the last several months, and we come tonight with a recommendation from the administration for board approval. This has been a collaborative approach between many district departments, as Dr. Z mentioned, principals, parents, and community members over the last several months to get us to this point tonight. Tonight, Dr. Gutierrez and I are going to share the podium and share the presentation. And before we begin, I want to note that this is a comprehensive presentation and that it is pretty extensive, and we recognize that. And so we are chunking the presentation. And so we are going to chunk it, I believe, into 4 segments, and we will stop at the end of each segment to ask for questions up to that point of where we are. We think that that will help instead of going all the way through the entire extensive presentation and backing up. Of course, we can move in and out of the segments, but we do think that that will help us with the ease of the presentation. So first of all, why are we here? We've seen this picture before. We've actually shown it here in a board presentation before. And we just want to underscore how Tomball ISD has grown from this small hidden gem to the destination district that it is today. And we are no longer a hidden gem. We are a public gem. And I don't mean G-Y-M, I mean G-E-M, where everyone wants to come. We are destination excellence, and if you build it, they will come. And we are building because they are coming. And that is a huge blessing to us. Growth is definitely a blessing to our community and to our district. We had 15 students. It says 12 to 15 because maybe our PEMS wasn't as great and as strong as it is today. But we had somewhere between 12 and 15 students in 1908. And today we are over 22,306 and probably 7 right now. That's how fast we grow. With the growth we have experienced over the last several years, Bond 2021 was passed, and we were going to build 4 new schools to accommodate that growing student enrollment. And you'll see here that timeline. So our first opening out of Bond 2021 will be West Elementary School, and that opens in the fall of 2024, which we are now in 2024. So in this year, this calendar year, we will open a new elementary school. West Intermediate will open on that same West complex 1 year later in 25-26. We will have our Creekside Park addition. We don't have the exact name of that, so we're coding that as the addition that will house our 5th and 6th graders in Creekside Park in 26-27, and then Tomball West High School that very same year, 26-27. All of the work that we have been doing is done under the foundation of our board policy. Board Policy FC Local outlines the process for attendance boundary adjustments. This was a policy that the board reviewed and did make some changes to in the recent past, and it allows for flexibility. That was the decision that the board made through that local policy to allow for that flexibility and customization of the process, depending on the differing factors that we are facing at the time for the need for the adjustment. So this process is a robust district zone reset. It basically reviews the entire district and resets those zones. That is very robust. Rarely does that happen. Normally, we're opening an elementary school, so we adjust for that elementary line. So this, looking at that whole zone reset, the board policy allowing that flexibility really helped us in this case. We do not foresee resetting like this at such a huge magnitude in the near future, or even in maybe the little far future. And so next time there's an adjustment to an attendance zone or a tweak to an attendance zone, the same process that we used through this reset process might not be used. The board policy allows for that flexibility, and we're able to design the process that's appropriate for the job at hand. So I'm not going to read that board policy to you. You can see there it is your board policy, and hopefully the audience was able to read through it while I was talking. The important part is that it does allow for the flexibility. Embedded in that policy, though, are some very important factors, and we call these guiding principles, or as we worked with the committee, we talked about guideposts. We want to provide parameters on how our decisions are made. We definitely want there to be community feedback, but that feedback that we take and that engagement from the community that we put in place for the best situation for the district has to fall within those guideposts that are set by board policy. Some of those guideposts are listed here. Family and student impact. We do want to consider the impact that changing attendance zones will have on families. That's very important. We are a people district. We value our families. We value our students most of all. And so we do want to focus on that family and student impact. We want to optimize the space that we have to the best of our ability. We want to have neighborhood unity to the best of our ability. As we grow, that becomes more difficult, but as much as we can do that, we want to maintain that. Natural lines, natural boundary lines, whenever possible. Growth, we want to look at where we are going in the future. Best effort will be made to look at future developments, working closely with our demographer. We don't want to have to come back next year and say, well, we're going to redo that again. There's no promise or guarantee that we absolutely won't have to make tweak year after year, but that is not our intention, and we do focus on that growth. Transportation cost and efficiency is also one of our guideposts. We do want to look at bus routes to be as efficient as possible, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. The goals of our district zone reset process, there were many, but there were 3 very important goals that guided us, the administration and the committee, through this entire process. We wanted to provide our community ample opportunity for involvement and feedback in order to provide a foundation for the work. A little bit later in the presentation, you will see analytics of our community engagement. And some of the figures we are very pleased with, and some of them were wow factors for us at the amount of engagement that we got with our information. And so we will show you that. We did want to provide transparency throughout the process with frequent email communications, video recordings. And so we know that when we talk about that transparency, we know that in today's age, and the way things are handled today with social media, there can oftentimes on social media and different avenues of communication be misinformation. It was important to us and very critical to the district that we be the source of accurate information, and so we utilized our district website for all communication about the district zone reset so that that was the official source of information with the facts. It was our goal for this not to be a secretive process. We wanted to be highly transparent with the robust information and put everything on our website. It was another goal to create new attendance boundaries that promote the best interest of all district students to the best of our ability. And Dr. Z mentioned at the beginning, and we'll mention again, and we said throughout, because it weighed on our hearts, that we know that we cannot come out with district zones where 100% of the people are going to say, that is the best thing you could have done, and we are so happy. We want that. We want everyone to be pleased. That was our goal, but we know that given the constraints that we have, that was not 100% possible. And so we had to focus on making the best decision for the district as a whole, for the long term, as well as our current students in the short term. So we do want to take a brief moment to publicly thank our community, not only our community that is here, but our community as a whole, for their involvement and engagement throughout this entire process, for their professionalism, for their feedback, and to the committee members for their feedback in shaping this work. I know that we have a couple of the community members here. All of our principals were committee members, but we had equal number of community members there. So if you are a committee member in attendance tonight, will you please stand and be recognized for your contribution to the process? I know we have some parent representatives.
Please stand. Please stand. Thank you.
So that is what the process has been. And so I do want to stop now at the end of segment 1 and ask you, do you have any questions up to this point?
I'll ask one real quick. So Martha, this process that Amy's just described, that's what everybody in the state of Texas does, right? Including all of our neighboring districts.
No. No. I think that it depends on the size of the district. I think at one point, perhaps more districts followed such a rigorous, thoughtful, intentional process. More districts, for various reasons, have gone to perhaps just notifying parents, this is where your child will go, or to a much simplified process. This is extremely robust, and you'll hear more as our presenters continue, the ways in which we incorporated the feedback through thought exchange, through surveys, through, of course, the opportunity to engage with the board and administration through emails and whatnot. This was a very thorough process with a lot of intentionality, knowing that it affected the entire district. And Tomball, regardless of our size, this board, this elected group of 7, has continued to say, we want to go the extra step. Not to say other boards don't, but for various reasons, either administration or board or a team of 8 decided not to. We feel that this is important. I love that Dr. Schindewolf said our goal is to have 100% satisfaction. That is very difficult in today's climate. I learn that more and more often. I still strive for that, but I know it's almost impossible. At the end of the day, if we can justify why decisions are made, I'm good with that. And I am pleased with the process and even more pleased with the board's support of this process. That's important. I can't reiterate that enough. Not all boards support the work of their administration. And I know I say this often, but we should never take that for granted because many people have seen that taken away.
Thanks for that. I think I knew your answer.
Okay.
But I appreciate you
Reminding people
yes.
maybe. Yeah.
And the board, we had discussions prior to all of this about how we all would like to see the process go and the amount of input. And I think that you and your team were able to create a process that allowed the input that this board had wanted to be able to see from the community. So
I feel really, really good about this. And the board is extremely involved in operations. This is one where it is with intentionality as well that you sit back and let it happen. and stay a part of it by watching everything. Of course, in full transparency, we posted meetings and we informed people so you could feel a part of it, even if you weren't. Not just the board, but all other parents.
I would just add, I have taken a more active approach on understanding the DZR process in the last days than I did, let's say, when this kicked off. And the reason why is because of the goals that we set, right? To provide the community ample opportunity to listen. I love the fact that all of the information is out and available on the webpage. I've not seen that in Tomball ISD before to the extent that it exists now. I've really appreciated the video recordings of the meetings. And so for me, I have had all of my concerns allayed. I'm pleased that we as a board also put forth a board policy to make this process much easier for you and your team and this committee to execute. Those guideposts, as you might recall, we spent a good amount of time, and so there's a lot of thought and intentionality to build on those words and what those guideposts were, and that's manifested itself in the policy. So for me, I've had a great deal of confidence coming into this. Obviously, we have 3 more chunks to go through, but I think it's a great best-in-class process. To John's point, we don't see that very often in surrounding school districts. I'm pleased that you were able to do that here.
Thank you. Continue.
Okay, and now Dr. Gutierrez is going to come forward and begin a demographic review.
All right, awesome. Good evening. Foundational to our ability to achieve these goals, there's lots of data. And to begin this whole process, there was a thorough review of our demographic data. And so Tomball ISD, many of you know, has partnered with Zonda Education, formerly Templeton Demographics, to provide our demographic data to project growth and our ability to manage that district growth. We do have in attendance with us today Rocky Gardner from Zonda Education. He has been our partner in Tomball ISD working through this process. But I just want to highlight, whenever you do a reset or a rezone, demographic data is often one of the pieces the community or folks like to poke holes in when you're doing this reset, because unfortunately folks understand that there will be a change and that data is often criticized. And in previous meetings and emails, I'm sure you have also received some of that information about the quality of the demographic data. And so I do want to address that. I will say that it's a data point that is often used, but it's often used incorrectly. And I do believe it's because folks don't understand what that data is or how it's represented or how it's generated. For FYI, I believe I mentioned this at our previous meeting, the reports that we get and the data that we project is from an October to October snapshot. And so we provide Rocky and Zonda Education our PEAM snapshot data, the data that is officially submitted to the state of Texas as our enrollment for this year. That data is used for their projections, and we are, based on that, all of the numbers go from 1 year out. And so a lot of times folks will criticize the September or August data and say, you said it was going to be 1,027 students and there's only 1,015. You were off, right? And so I say that facetiously, but that allows for some of the growth that continues to happen, and through time and through what we know, natural progression of enrollment, those numbers do become closer and tighter. I will say our October to October snapshot number, district-wide, we were off by 32 students. And when you look at how fast this growth is, again, we were within 32 students of what Rocky projected from October to October. So just an FYI.
32 total students.
32 total students. And so
Pretty close.
that is very close. And a lot of times what we'll say, within 5 years, it's pretty clear what that data is going to look like. And I do want to comment, I know last board meeting, we had someone come and talk about projections from 2014, almost 10 years ago. And we'll tell you ourselves, and even in FC Local, it says review a 5-year projection of campus enrollments, because after 5 years, a lot of things can change. Actuarially, there's a lot of data that goes into making those projections. The environments have to be consistent in order to be able to project that. So things like an unforeseen pandemic or a housing market that is red hot can often change the environment, which then makes sense that the enrollments or the projections would change over time. Think about the developments that didn't exist 10 years ago. I believe Timber Creek didn't even have apartments 10 years ago. They were not zoned or platted at that time. And so all of that information would be taken into account, would change that number. So again, just referencing some recent commentary here at this podium about the accuracy. I believe it was quoted 25% off. That's a 10-year ago data number, and we do even say within 5 years, very strong confidence in the numbers. After years 6 through 10, a lot of things have to remain the same, and just we know things change, and so just want to highlight that again. We leave the work up to demographic professionals. And then we follow up to make sure that that data is accurate. And so we are within 1%. I would say, again, 32 students, that's lower than 1%. And industry standard would be 5% for the campuses. In many cases, we're much lower than that, within 2 or 3%. There's only one campus where we were above 5%, and that was Lakewood. They had a higher than expected reduction in their enrollment, and we've already made account for that moving forward. And so just want to bring some of that data to your attention. So with that, we did, though, however, last year at your request, board request, ask us to maybe kick the tires a little bit. We've been with Zonda for over 10 years. Maybe we should look at other demographic services, and we did that. We explored another demographic company that is used in this area by some of our neighbors. And after a review of our analysis of the projections and a comparison of the two services, we decided to continue with our partnership with Zonda Education. And I will say primarily focused on those 3 bullet points you see. One, we are confident and comfortable in the projections that we see and that we are working with day in and day out. There is a value of the service, and not that everything is about the dollars and cents, but you do as a board have a fiduciary responsibility to bring the best services at the best possible price for our constituents, and we believe we have that. And I would say this has been reinforced throughout this whole process. Exceptional customer service. I can't tell you how many times Karen Graves and I have texted Rocky and his colleague Matthew Cluck that have worked very closely with us on this project. Do you have time for a quick 30-minute meeting? And then yes, and then next thing you know, it was like 2 hours later, that 30 minutes turned into 2 hours, but they made that time for us. And so I do want to publicly also thank Rocky while he's here and Matthew for their work on that. I would say they want this to work just as much as we do, and I think that's what you want in a partner. They're not here just to do the service and walk away. Rocky was here at our committee meetings. He is here tonight, and he has provided a great service. And so I do want to address that again as a foundational point for this rezone work. All right. As Dr. Shidewolf mentioned, we talk about growth and the current state of our campuses, and why are we doing this process? Why are we rezoning? The yellow highlighted cells indicate a campus is over capacity. I do want to make, and it's noted here on the right, this reflects an aligned K4 elementary configuration. This was based on are moving forward with aligning our levels across the district. But for your reference, I do have with the K-5 enrollment as of right before leaving break for the 3 schools out in the northeast part of Tomball ISD. Again, if you look at where the campuses are being built, in the campuses that need the most relief, you see Grand Oaks. If you build it, they will come. The folks that have been there, they love it. That campus and the growth is happening out in the west side of Tomball. And so you see already exceeding capacity if we had not opened up, if we're not opening up West Elementary next year. And so you see Grand Oaks, Decker Prairie, you see Rose Hill creeping up, and then in Tomball Elementary needing relief in a few years. I will say, if you look at the bottom, our collective capacity at this moment is 9,712. That's what seats that we have available for. And so you see that we do have capacity coming available, but it is diminishing out into 28, 29, out to 2030, 31. And so bringing on West Elementary allows us to have a little bit more breathing room and not make drastic shifts in distributing the students, where we can consider things like proximity that we'll discuss later on today. And so those are our elementary forecasted numbers. Taking a look at intermediate school, this underscores the need for our 2 campuses that we discussed. I know previously in some of the committee meetings that top campus cell was identified as intermediate number 5. Since then, we've made that decision to be the Creekside addition, and so that is the 5th and 6th grade. You see the note there that there is not a capacity listed for that campus that is currently being designed with our architects and our campus, and so we'll be able to ensure that that campus has sufficient capacity for the enrollment that is coming. But you see Tomball Intermediate Campus. I know Dr. Marciando would echo the need for some relief there. You see that campus well beyond its capacity, and again, that is fueled by the growth that is happening out in the west part of Tomball ISD. I know there's been a lot of commentary about the location of campuses, why we would build campuses out in the west side is because that is where the majority of the growth that is driving these campuses and the capacity issues. And so you see Tomball Intermediate, and then down the line you also see Oakcrest also reaching capacity. Moving toward junior high, because of the way the zones are currently constructed, a lot of the growth that you're seeing in the Tomball junior high zone, that is also the same growth that is fueling TIS and Grand Oaks and Decker Prairie and Rose Hill. And again, this configuration reflects an aligned 7th through 8th junior high enrollment. Just for your note, current capacity is 1,174. Just roughly at about 500 students per year to that Creekside Park Junior High enrollment. And so one of the goals there was to provide some relief to Tomball Junior High. I bring this data to you, one, as a reference point, so when we start looking at the zones, understanding, one, where we were primarily trying to provide relief and which campuses saw the greatest shifting of students. Okay, moving towards high school, as Dr. Z mentioned, when you're bringing on high schools, and really the high schools for the most part where we had a lot of the pain points, discussing who should go to which campus, but clearly you see through the highlighted cells we have capacity issues at both of our high schools. This is the driver. This is the reason why you all have you passed or voted to approve bond 2021. Why our voters approved and passed that? It's because we do need that third comprehensive high school. If you look out to 28, 29, we are at its height there, 2930 at over 3,700 students. This is its current boundary. This would be everything west of Telge. And I mention that to you for a specific reason, because folks are saying, hey, why not use Telge as the dividing line? Everyone who's west of Telge should stay at Tomball Memorial. Case in point, just take a look at its current enrollment. It would not be possible, and Dr. Bailey would probably tell you, they'd be more than comfortably snug there at Tomball Memorial, while you can potentially add, let's say, hey, stack up the temporary buildings, the core infrastructure, the base of the library, the kitchens, all of the support spaces they were not built to support 3,700 students. And so, again, that would be everyone west of Telge staying at Tomball Memorial. And again, I would just say this slide right here shows why we can't crowd our schools. And part of FC Local in building that, I know some of the foundation to that policy is also the belief of how big our high schools should get, and understanding that we were not fans of the 6,000 student high school that roughly built based on the size of the capacities that we built our schools. We are looking at a 3,000, 3,500 student max of capacity, and so or up to Tomball High School with the additions of 36. And so just want to keep that in mind. We'll circle back to why west of Telge can't be at Tomball Memorial. But at this point, that brings us to segment 2, if you will. And so I want to pause and ask any questions. I know I kind of talked a lot about data, the yellow highlighted cells, the demographic data. And so I just want to pause for any questions.
Hey, Dr. G.
Yes, sir.
When we think about demographic data, the district is just not receiving unfiltered, unguided data from Zonda, right? There's actually human judgment involved. You're participating in this. Others from the district are feeding the human judgment aspect of what Zonda is ultimately producing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's not just a Zonda on their own providing Tomball ISD the information, and Tomball ISD on a 100% rote level accepting what Zonda is providing, correct?
That is correct, and I will say even go a step further. They don't make that recommendation. They provide the data to allow us to make the recommendations and decisions. So that decision doesn't lie with Zonda, but with administration.
Okay, so there's human judgment involved, and it's from a lot of folks that understand where the roads are, understand the communities, understand where the developers are developing, understanding the history of where we've been. There's just a variety of input and human judgment that goes into adding value to what Zonda is producing.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think that point is lost a lot. I don't know that there's necessarily an appreciation for how much human judgment is going into this. There's a criticism at times of Zonda. I would say, forget the name Zonda. I would just say any demographer in a fast-growth school district like we're in. I just think highlighting when this arises, if it arises again, how much human judgment is actually going into this. So that was a point I wanted to draw out.
Good point. Very good point.
Maybe now's a good time, not to put Rocky on the spot, but if maybe 1 or 2 minutes, just some of the data that goes behind this. Do you speak with the developers? Do you talk to the counties, that sort of thing? Maybe just fill in, provide just a little bit of context about the depth that you go to, which I know is pretty deep, behind the numbers.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back in Tomball. Yeah, we've got a team of researchers. So our team, at every quarter, we're looking at housing data that we collect from all the housing developments that are, they'll collect this data on a quarterly basis. They're counting homes that are under construction, vacant developed lots. We're looking at future lot inventory, and we are talking to the developers and the builders. The bigger Zonda brings in that data, and they summarize it. But then our team goes back and they'll look at the minutes of the city of Tomball's planning and zoning. They'll look at their minutes just to see when some of that stuff's kicking off. We've got some really good now high resolution photos that are within a couple months old, so they can kind of explore that and just see if they see dirt moving somewhere, because we kind of begin to make some estimates, but based on that dirt moving. So there's quite a bit of that going on. I mean, it's continuous for our team. And we've also got a mapping group as well that then mapping this information, and we map the students to where they live, so we know kind of what they're yielding and how that yield's changing. I mean, there's always surprises each year, and professional judgment comes in a lot of times. From my perspective, when I'm doing the projections, I don't just take 200 homes, multiply it times 0.5 and say we're going to have growth of 100 students. I have to look at that history, and then I got to decide if that 100 homes is going to continue to go at that pace. And we make professional judgments, and sometimes we're correct. It has been that beyond 5 years is really important to understand, because 4 years ago when COVID hit, the first thing we did as a company, and I'll admit to this, is we went back to every one of our clients and said, wait, your projections are going to be low. Housing's going to stop. This is going to happen. And then a month later, housing took off. We're like, oh no, wait, our projections are good. So one of those deals. We've got to be on the fly. And then two years ago, interest rates started dropping, and then it really did impact starts and closings. Now they've turned the corner again, and Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth are the two hottest housing districts in the country. Was that too much? I'm sorry.
Definitely not too much. I appreciate the filling in some color and just. You talked about the human factor that kind of goes into this judgment. How long have you been doing this again?
2005. I've been doing city and regional planning since about 95, but
Okay.
school work since 2005.
Yep. Yeah, I appreciate that, Rocky.
Thanks.
So it was a year ago, as I reflect, I was fairly critical of Zonda. What I had asked Dr. G and Dr. Schindewolf to do, I think Dr. Schindewolf was in the seat at the time, hey, let's go back and understand this apartment growth. And there were a couple other tweaks that I asked for to go into the model. And as I understand it, you conveyed that to Rocky, and Rocky has since made those additional, I call them modules, those adjustments to reflect some of the criticism that I had and that some of those in the community were voicing. Do you feel comfortable that that feedback has been integrated into this model going forward?
Absolutely.
Okay. I appreciate that. I don't have a timestamp on these reports. This is October, 22 to 23. What's the pull of this report? You said October to October. What's the date on? I don't have a date stamp.
So
on any of
actually for this, so normally the way the cadence is with our reports with Rocky, we get 2 reports, a fall and a spring report. That fall report is going to be based on an October to October. In order to do this demographic work, we were before the fall report. So this is as of September data. And so we'll also get updated, refreshed data with that spring report as well.
Okay, so September 2023 is the timestamp on this?
Correct.
So we're
I would like to add to what you've mentioned. In the meeting that I was a part of where you discussed your concern and your want for us to continue to look at others, there was one or two, there were perhaps 1 or 2 community members that also echoed that. We did go and we did look. We did our due diligence, I believe, and visited with others. And again, not speaking ill of anyone else doing this work, when we think of a partnership, when we look at what Templeton, now Zonda, has continued to provide for us, the cost, when we look at if cost efficiency is important as well. If you aren't getting what you need and the cost is at a certain price, that's something to consider. But when we looked at what other companies were offering at an extremely higher dollar amount, that was a concern. That is not even a part of asking somebody to come to meetings or answering the calls or jumping on a Zoom if we're having maybe a cabinet meeting or executive team meeting and need a little bit of insight, that when we looked at all those additional meetings, what that would cost. We have many partners that do that with us, and that's what I think about when you think of partnerships. People are there for you and not just billable minutes, billable hours, billable moments. It's always, okay, our partner needs this, let's roll up our sleeves and make that happen. And so I think that's important to mention. We did I as superintendent listened to your concern, as well as any community member that might think. But again, as a community member, there's a lot you don't know. And I understand that. It's not the work you're doing day to day. There are many behind the scenes pieces and moving parts. And so always happy for someone to push and say, is this the right partner at the time? We are very happy to say we believe the answer is yes. As a member of Fast Growth, as a matter of fact, as the president of the State Fast Growth School Coalition, I will tell you that Templeton Demographics, now Zonda, continues to be a leader in the work that they do, and we like partnering with leaders.
Absolutely. And before we move on, they're with 60 school districts and it's across the state. And even as we were sort of, as you say, kick the tires on another company, as we kind of painted the picture of some of the criticisms, full transparency, they said if we were doing your rezone work, we'd be facing the same criticism, right? As I mentioned in the first slide where I started, demographic data is often used as a mechanism, is the data point to poke a hole in to say why we shouldn't move this neighborhood or that neighborhood. And so hopefully this provided a little bit of narrative or a little context for how we get these numbers.
Thank you. This is an important conversation. Another question. You've mentioned it, but I really want to over-communicate it. The reports that you are providing here align the district from top to bottom. Our K through 4 format,
Right.
our 5 and 6 format, our 7th and 8th format, and then our high school format.
Correct.
Okay, so we will have elementary, intermediate, junior high, and high school formats.
Correct.
Okay.
Where we will
It's-
have an exception to
I'm
that
asking a
moving
loaded
forward in the
question.
future. Yes.
Yes, okay. Got it. You made a reference to Telge Road. You're going to need to cover that in more detail as you get to the next, because I didn't get if we had to do something different with Memorial, Telge Road, I didn't get that, so you're going to need to kind of go a little deeper.
Absolutely.
and get to that.
Once we get down into some of the
Yeah.
maps and the specifics coming down further, I would definitely cover that.
Final comment that I would like to make. So when we as a board have talked about bonds of the past, bond 2021 specifically, we have put forth some guideposts on the size of our high schools.
Correct.
And so while we have Tomball Memorial, which has been expanded, right? It's 3,000 student capacity. And certainly Tomball High School was expanded much earlier than that, which gets us to 3,600. But our expectation as a board is 3,600 is the maximum size high school we'll have in this district.
Correct.
As we model Tomball West, can you remind me the capacity of Tomball West?
That is a very
It's,
good question. 3,000.
3,000.
Okay. So our focus as a school board, as a district, is you and your team, it's on a high school anywhere from 3,000 to 3,600.
Correct. And I think it's important to mention that that is a community, that's something this board has talked about quite a bit, like how big is too big? And I think that it's wise when I have worked in districts where high schools are exponentially higher, and that can cause other concerns at different times. And so I think that's very wise, and as administration, I certainly support that as superintendent, and I think all of the team does as well. I think that's very prudent. Thank you.
Yeah, although
Phase 3.
one more thing about reflecting here about demographics. That's probably one job I do not want for most areas, because you think about it in Tomball, it takes 2 to 3 property owners to go together and sell 500 acres, 1,000 acres, and then you're gonna have exponentially more stuff that you have
Absolutely.
nothing on the books. They didn't say anything, and then one day you see a for sale sign, and all your projections have just went out the window because, especially me on the prairie there, we got 500 acres that we can sell very fast, and that'd be another 3,000 houses sitting out there that were not projected to be anywhere
Spot
near
on.
that. So that's probably one job that, it's probably a monthly grind to see, which old timer is selling out because they're not farming no more and the kids don't want it. So that's like a real thing around here. So I give a lot of kudos to keeping up. We talked about this before, said, hey, some places, you might have it, but they're not doing anything. But, just at a drop of a hat, that can change pretty dramatically. And all the work we just did, we're gonna start over again. So, it's a little bit of science, a little bit of magic, and a little bit of good luck to get all this done. So I'm very happy. We talked about this a lot. So a lot of things go into it. It's just not a magic formula where we can 1,000 houses and 0.25 kids and 0.2 dogs, whatever. A lot of things go to it. So I'm very happy.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so we have been through where we currently are and why we came to the district zone reset process. So now let's get to the meat of what that process was and then get to the maps and our recommendation. And so I want to outline our reset process. And so first, way back on October 10th, 2023, we came to the board into the October board meeting, and we told you that this is something that we wanted to launch because of where we were. And that same evening, an email went to the community about the process. And then an application was open for participation in the rezoning committee. October 11th through the 22nd, we had a thought exchange. And that thought exchange asked one question: what are the important factors, thoughts, or questions that you would like us to consider as we create new attendance zones for new schools? We had 1,181 participants 878 thoughts and 30,000 ratings. So we started out with high engagement with that 30,000 ratings on our thought exchange. On that thought exchange, the feedback highlighted proximity, safety, commute time as some of the top priorities for the district to consider. Next, on October 25th, we had our committee meeting number 1. Our community members were randomly selected through that application. I do want to thank publicly Joseph Kivam, because he was able to program that randomizer to be able to select our random parent through each campus. And he was also able to work with our surveys that went out throughout the process, putting that in our home access center to make sure that those were controlled and we were able to get those responses. So I want to give him a shout out and appreciate him. We had 44 members that were on that committee. All of our principals and one parent per campus. We called it our principal plus one. And we did have that first meeting on October 25th. And then also we went on October 25th and we posted maps for Plan 1 and 2 to our website with that parent survey. We had 829 responses on the first survey. And we were able to take information from the survey and create a Plan 3 prior to the first listening tour. So we did not want to just wait and collect information and what are we going to do with that information. We were constantly monitoring those survey results. What are we hearing? What are the themes? Can we consider that? And we were able to create a map 3 and put that out on the website. Send out a letter to our district and say, we now have a map 3. And so people were able to address maps 1, 2, and 3 at that listening tour. At our listening tour number 1 on November 8th, we had 23 registered speakers, but we did have approximately 160 attendees. That first listening tour was held at Tomball Memorial High School. I will say about the listening tour, it truly was listening. There was not a response from administration on the comments, but we wrote every comment down and we were able to put those into themes. And then Dr. Gutierrez was able to work with his team and Rocky to say, these are the themes, can we address these? These are concerns from the community. Is there anything that we can do? How does this affect our number? How does this affect our forecast? And so we truly did listen and take that information back. On the very next week, on November 15th, we had listening tour stop number 2, and that was at Tomball High School. We had more speakers at that site, and you could speak regardless of what high school you were currently zoned to. It was open to the whole district. And so we just ended up having more at that second one. So we had 55 registered speakers and 120 in attendance. And then based on feedback from the parent comments, we were able to create Plan 4 prior to the second committee meeting. We also opened a second survey, and on that survey, we asked for, looking at Plan 1, 2, 3, and 4, what would be your preference for your household based on everything? And you can see the response that we had there on your slide. We did have 982 responses to Survey 2. And then on December 4th, we were able to go to committee meeting number 2 and present all of that information along with a lot of summary information from everything that we had learned from surveys 1 and 2, and also from listening tour stop 1 and 2. At that December 4th meeting, based on feedback that we had received from the community, we were able to eliminate plans 1 and 2, those early plans, from consideration. As we got more community feedback and continued to work with the demographer, we were able to let those plans evolve into what we felt like was a better representation of what was best for the district as a whole and our community wants. We had our final committee meeting on December 11th, and there our committee was able to provide us final advisement in preparation for the recommended plan that we bring to you tonight. The committee there, they would give us verbal feedback, but they also gave us written feedback. And they endorsed the final plan that we had for them, but they had an ask. And the ask of the committee was there were 3 or 4 targeted areas that they said, we would like a little more information on just these targeted areas. We would like you to dig a little bit deeper on, is this committee certain that they are aware of what we are asking of them in the plan? And so we again worked with Joseph to do that limited survey to dig deeper into those targeted areas that Dr. Gutierrez will go into. And then we were able to utilize those in implementing those into the district administration's final recommendation to the board. And so tonight we are at January 8th, where we are giving our report, and tomorrow night we are asking for the vote of approval on our new attendance boundaries. So when we dig into the engagement, this is what we learned from the community. The common themes and suggestions were pretty consistent, and they were shared through the committee. You can see there that the word map, that is directly from Thought Exchange. So the largest word is the one that was mentioned the most. And so you can see there right in the middle was proximity. That was the number one consideration that people wanted. And so some of the things that were brought forward was the following suggestions: a 1-mile radius around the campus. So if I live within a 1-mile radius around the campus, I should be zoned to that school. Or east of Telge as the border for Tomball Memorial. So everyone who lives on the east side of Telge, that should be the line. Also, we heard, why can't we just expand our current schools? Just make them bigger so that we can continue to go to the school we're currently at. And we did hear some questions about the dual language campus and maybe putting the dual language campus at the Tomball Innovation Center or some other suggestions for that campus. When you look at the 1-mile radius, you'll see shortly what it would look like to include a larger radius around Tomball Memorial High School and what that building utilization would look like if we adhered to that suggestion. Also, when you talk about expanding the current campus, we felt like that was outside the scope of the committee work. We would hear that from the community. We felt like the idea to expand our campuses to larger was outside the committee work. There's not a plan for campus expansion, and as we just discussed, it goes against the guideposts that we have set in the district for the size of our campus. There was also some talk about that we shouldn't have any more than a 10-minute commute. And although we understand that a longer commute could be a detriment to a family, and it does cut into family time and could add additional stress, due to the current locations of our current campuses today, we have many families commuting over 10 minutes today. We have some families commuting upwards of 20 minutes from the far southwest into Tomball Intermediate School or Tomball High School, and we do have some other examples of that. We didn't feel like in the district zone reset, working within the constraints that we had, that we could be successful at minimizing commute time to no more than 10 minutes district-wide. We had the suggestion for transportation to a student not to be on the bus more than 45 minutes. We are a district that does provide transportation to everyone in the district, regardless of how far they live from a campus. There are some districts that have a minimum, you have to live a certain distance from the school to be eligible for transportation. We say you can live next door to the school and we will provide you transportation if that's something that you sign up for. We are only reimbursed by the state for students that are picked up more than two or more miles from the campus, but it has been a priority of us to provide that service for as long as we possibly can to all of our families. Safety of travel routes, 99 is a concern for our young drivers to be on that. And we do understand that. And there were some suggestions about whether the district could provide feeder roads or whether we could account for the infrastructure of 99. And the district nor the county own land that have to do with Highway 99. And so that's not something within the committee work or the recommendation of the administration that we can do. We do understand the concern for young drivers and adult drivers, let's be honest. And so there are alternate routes to get to all of the schools, but we do acknowledge that that does extend the commute. But all of our schools have routes to them that you do not have to get on 99. It's not uncommon now in surrounding areas. We have this with Cy-Fair. You can see Bridgeland. We have this with Conroe ISD. I believe their school is also called Grand Oaks, that is also on 99 and Conroe ISD. But we made a commitment and we will continue to work with the county to improve roadways, and our precincts have been, our commissioners have been extremely responsive. And when Dr. Z talks about those partnerships, they are true partners to our district, and they have been willing and able to work within the resources that they have to help accessibility and road conditions, depending on which plan is picked. They say they are on board as a partner to help this situation. And then finally, we talked about consider social impact on friends and keeping families at the same schools. It has been a priority to minimize the impact on social development. We, of course, have a top priority in our student social development. Some subdivisions are big with so many students, and at times it can be difficult to maintain consistency and resolve proximity and capacity issues at nearby schools. But we do want to highlight, because this has been a question, and it's something that we had on our website, but I understand that there's a lot on our website. So I do want to make sure that everyone understands that when it comes to Tomball West, and we are opening that school with freshmen and sophomores, remembering in the fall of 26, if a family is rezoned to Tomball West and they have a freshman or sophomore student, but they also have a junior or senior student, there is that grandfather clause that we have in there to where your family does not have to be split. So there is that sibling exception. So as a parent, if I had a junior or senior and a freshman or sophomore, I could choose to keep my younger student at the current school with their sibling.
Or the other way. Where you choose to go to the new school.
Correct. No, because
Well,
they won't have
you
a
can't
senior.
go to the new school as a junior.
No.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Your grandfather, if you choose not to.
Right.
So as we go into the engagement stats, before we started this process, there was a tremendous amount of planning that we've talked about in order to design opportunities for community engagement. And I think that when we look at these stats, it speaks for itself that the community took that opportunity, and we are so appreciative that they did that, because it really did help guide where we started to where we ended up. On our, we use Blackboard for our email distribution to all of our district. We had 13 emails throughout the process from October until today. We had 13 emails sent to an average of 30,198 people with a 98% delivery rate. 11 of those emails went district-wide. 2 were for those targeted groups that we talked about for that limited survey. We had all of our videos of our committee meetings and also our listening tours on YouTube. We had 5 videos that totaled 8 hours, 9 minutes, and 39 seconds. We had 2,471 views by 1.6 thousand unique viewers, and it was 398 hours of watch time. And so people did go on there and educate themselves and become knowledgeable about that process. When we look at our webpage analytics between October 10th and December 20th, we had 63,851 page views from 29,301 users. Just on the District Zone Reset website, we had 20,803 first-time viewers. That is a wow factor for me. And I was actually just following up with Justin to make sure, like, this is accurate, that when we have the number of students that we have in the district. And so, and he mentioned to me, and I think that it's a very good point, that that's more first-time views than we have on our academic calendar. And so that's something that in the district, everyone is interested in, our instructional calendar. And so we had even more interest in this. We had 532,829 total events on the page. So I think that what that means, Justin, is clicks. And then we had file downloads, over 95,000 file downloads from the website. And so the survey responses, we had 2,132 submissions via the Home Access Center, and we've broken it down there by each survey. And so what we think these analytics show is that even if we did not hear from the community member, these numbers of access to the website show that our community members and our parents were accessing the information, becoming knowledgeable about the information, reading the information. Even if they did not feel the need to respond to the survey, the access information, the numbers of those accessing the information was huge. And so at this point, I'll stop to see if you have any questions.
As you can see, again, to reiterate, there was a lot of opportunity to be engaged in this process in every shape, form, or fashion. And so the fact that our communications team has done such an exceptional job of not just videotaping, but sharing website analytics, clicks, downloads, I'm glad that we're able to capture that so we really know the engagement of our destination district. It's quite impressive, I will say. Okay.
I have a couple questions. First, I'd like to agree with the scope. As far as the consideration by the committee to expand campuses, I agree with the decision that it not be part of the scope.
Okay.
We asked the Facilities Study Committee for Bond 2021 to do that work, and so we're in the execution phase of Bond 2021, and so I completely agree with the decision there. On the committee members and soliciting feedback at the individual campus level, I had voiced a question about how does one at the campus level provide feedback to that campus representative? I know it was anonymous. Was the path to encourage folks to respond to the survey or to give the principal direct feedback? If there was campus-specific feedback, how did it occur at the campus level?
So the best way that I can describe that is that it kind of happened authentically based on the committee members', I guess, choice. Because we, as a district, chose not to put out the committee members' names publicly. I know that that was asked, and we chose not to do that. But we made it known that our principals were members of the committee. So I know that all of our principals did receive feedback from their specific campus parents, and they were able to bring that and share that. And also through the survey, yes, some committee members, when I talk about that, the authentic, because it wasn't a set based on by the district, some committee members chose to put out there that they were that, and they got more feedback. Some chose not to, and so they didn't get as much individual feedback. We also would take into account not just the surveys, but every email we received, every point of feedback through any means that we received. We were able to take those and put those, I guess, into themes to be able to track that and then summarize that for the committee.
Which is going to be my next question. So 2,132 survey responses, that's a lot. So did you use technology? Did you use Mr. McLeod's AI tools to figure out a way to summarize the themes? I like what you said about, if it were a dissertation, right, you got themes, right? Could you talk a little bit more about how you got your arms around 2,132 surveys and condensed it down to represent the feedback that you got?
Yes.
One, I would say we specifically read every single comment. And so myself, I will say Karen Graves, my partner in this, we read every single response, every single submission. And so there was also exploration of using some AI tools. But honestly, we read every single one and we paid attention and bucketed those in. And I would just say by and large, the same themes emerged that Dr. Schindewolf mentioned: proximity, safety. It was just from their lens about their specific community. So it was actually, I would say, relatively easy. But when you talk about grouping them into buckets, they were very consistent voices, just representing a different community. But we read every single response.
Okay. I think that's an important answer for me today, because some of the feedback that I've picked up is, well, they're not listening. But you're actually saying, no, we did. We read every 2,132 responses. So I think that's an important thing when we do this, that our community believes that the district is listening.
And understands that. I want to reiterate why, when the pushback and there was concern from yourself, Dr. Pratt, and others, as far as perhaps why don't we release the names. We are at a time in society where an individual may want to give of their time, may want to use their voice, but these are parents, community members, and unfortunately in society today, and Tomball is not immune to this, sometimes people can be very passionate about their beliefs and their thoughts, and we've all read negative comments on social media. It's one thing to do that towards a staff member. We do work for the district, but we didn't want for volunteers from our parent group to be subjected, quite honestly, through what we are subjected through quite frequently. That makes me sad to state that, but that is the reality of the society we live in. It's not just Tomball. But we did not want to have our parent volunteers be subjected to that treatment. Continue.
All right, awesome. Before I go to the last thing, I just also want to highlight this one bullet point for the 3 times that we put out the emails that there were new plans and information since we've been tracking this information that the district zone reset eclipsed the district homepage. It's the first time that's happened, but it happened 3 times in this process, and that was the 25th, November 3rd, and the 17th after we put out new information. And so I publicly want to thank Justin Warnash and Allison Suarez for their work in helping put this plan together and coordinating of the communication. Okay, so before we get into the specifics of the map and sort of the iteration of all of the different maps, I want to just do a little recap, a little front loading of how to read some of these maps. And so I'm going to start on the left-hand side. You have the map legend, so that just identifies the color coding for each campus, and so that'll be specific by elementary, intermediate, junior high, high school. There is a dark red line. Red line is for the elementary. There are different colors for intermediate. Intermediate, I believe, is yellow. Junior highs are green, and the high schools are blue. On this page, you're seeing a red line, and so the red line is an outline of what our current boundaries are, our current zone boundaries. In between that, you're going to see these faint, lighter red lines, and these show what we call planning areas within each attendance zone. That just sort of divides that boundary into smaller plots, capturing different land, different subdivision, neighborhoods, and then within each planning area, there is a small number in that planning area, and that shows actually how many students in that planning area within that attendance zone attend that campus at that level. And so right here, this is an elementary example, as I mentioned. So you're going to see elementary numbers represented within each planning area. Those are specific students. Those are geo-coded based on our snapshot that we pulled, not our October snapshot, what we pulled for this process effective September 11th, 2023. This number is based on that. And so for your reference, looking at to see where are the changes, where are the moves that we made, take a look at areas that are specifically outside of that red boundary line. I've highlighted 3 here for your example. If we're looking at the teal color up north, northwest, that is the Rose Hill zone and Decker Prairie zone. You see the little red line. The teal goes above that red line. That's an example of a shift, a new, a changing of that boundary. Rose Hill's attendance zone increased. Again, that's outside of the current boundary line into the next. You see that also down below in the south. That's the Canyon Point zone. There is a green color that is outside of where the red is representing the Canyon Point zone. That's to denote a change to the Canyon Point zone. You also see that, these are just for examples, there are many others that were changed. But again, in the Creekside Forest, you see some of that light tan color outside of the red line that is the current Creekside Forest. That's just an example of where you could identify zones that have been impacted or changed. Again, the note there, just what I mentioned, there are many others, but I just highlight that for reference. Before I get started going through the different plans, I do want to point out, and this is something that Rocky and I and the team talk about a lot, there are aspects of each plan that we think meet our guideposts, our guiding principles, but within each plan, there are pain points. There are some things that you may hear, our best efforts are to make everyone happy, but there are some folks that will say, hey, you didn't achieve my want of proximity here, or community unity, or using clean lines, or enrollment utilization. And so just want to, in the next couple of slides, I'm going to show what are some of the areas that we prioritize and what some of those pain points are. One that we as a district are going to ultimately live with, or individuals in the community that they may have to live with. But overall, these plans work for the district. But again, highlighting some of the pros and cons, if you will, within that. Although we have the elementary plans that are first going to be phased in beginning next year, the real driver behind some of this was the high school plans. And so what we did was started with high school and backward aligned the campus plans. And so the next couple of slides you're going to see focus primarily on the high school and what the drivers are for the high school. So let's take a look at draft rationale plans. Looking at Plan 1. Plan 1 prioritized some of these guideposts here. They're clean boundary lines. You can see 249, the west of 249 going to Tomball West High School. Down south near the brown and the blue or the purple, depending on your color there. That is Shaw as a clean boundary line. And so you see aesthetically, this plan looks really nice. It has a higher utilization for Tomball West High School. This would populate Tomball West High School to open at about 1,800 students, recognizing that would be a little bit lower because 10th and 11th and 12th grade students would remain at their current campus. And there was, we had the ability to maintain somewhat cleaner feeder pattern lines, and we did mention this previously, I know in committee meetings and here. It is very difficult to maintain once a cougar, always a cougar, a wildcat or tiger, but the math of how many campuses that we have. We have 13 elementary campuses bringing on 14. Currently we have, we would have 5 intermediate level campuses, 4 junior highs and 3 high schools. And so the common denominator there does not make it clean to be able to say, we're promising you the cleanest feeder pattern. So there are some instances, and you do have that data for you to show that some campuses are split between 2 campuses. It is something that we currently have right now, especially on the west side. We'll just say it's some of the awkward phase of the growth that we're in. Some of the pain points here I want to point out, and I think you should be able to see my cursor up here. Yeah. Some of the pain points here, longer commutes for folks out in the northwest portion of our district in the Wood Trace area. Folks, some of the early commentary was, I can go from here and be at Tomball High School within 6 minutes, and there's much longer commute going down west to Tomball West High School. And so longer commutes for folks in the north and northwest. Certainly, still some proximity concerns for folks around Tomball Memorial. I will say specifically the neighborhoods of Hayden Lakes, Wildwood at Oak Crest. They're literally right here And depending on which summer day you're outside in your backyard where you can stand the heat, you can probably hear the Roaring Blue Band play out there. But those students would not be zoned to Tomball Memorial High School. And so there were also some concerns at Lakes at North Point here and the Enclave there. And so those were some of the pain points specifically for Plan 1. There were some aspects that met those guideposts, but certainly some issues with Plan 1. There was also an imbalance between ultimately the outputs or the end enrollment for the high schools. I believe Tomball High School was about 3,000, and that dropped down Tomball Memorial to low 2,000s. And so there was a little bit of a disparity between the high schools. So Plan 2, these were the first two plans that were released. Plan 2 prioritized proximity for those that are within walking distance. And so I know there were lots of questions of board members. You fielded lots of concerns from individuals in the aforementioned neighborhoods here, Hayden Lakes, Wildwood at Oakcrest, and Oakcrest. These folks, in order to, Dr. Pratt, you mentioned, talking a little bit what east of Telge meant of staying at Memorial. Here's Telge. The blue line would denote that this is our current Tomball Memorial High School zone. But if you go back to the second segment where I was talking about current enrollment, that was up to 3,700 students in 28. And so again, we that goes beyond the capacity, what we believe that a high school size should be. And so it was not possible to keep this entire area of the South that is currently zoned to Tomball Memorial at Memorial. And so understanding that in order to provide relief to Memorial, in order to open up Tomball West High School with sufficient student capacity, somebody from the South had to go to Tomball West High School. And so I will say, and I did mention this in our committee meeting number 2, and I'll say this here. I know there were lots of questions about why would we move the southernmost portion of the district all the way west. And I will tell you, this idea for moving folks in the Lakewood area, this is primarily the Lakewood Elementary Zone, there was data going back to the thought exchange, back when Dr. Schindewolf mentioned from the 11th to the 25th of November, that there was feedback about what we should consider as priority. Individuals said, if you are already commuting 10, 12, 15 minutes from the southern tip of the district to Memorial, then what is an additional 10 minutes, 12 minutes to Tomball West High School? Now, when I did say that in the committee meeting, as Dr. Schindewolf mentioned, folks are watching that. I did receive a couple emails saying I was not being sensitive to the plight of those in the southern portion. I was just sharing that was actually parent communication feedback to say, those of us who can literally walk to Memorial should be prioritized over those that are already in their car or in their bus, on the bus, going to Memorial. So we should be prioritized over those that are already driving. And so this was not a Dr. Gutierrez or a Tomball ISD plan to say, let's see how we could foil the commute plans or after-school activities of those in the South. This was directly in an effort to meet that goal of proximity, of walking distance, and those that are directly right around Memorial to put them at the campus. The only way to achieve that was to move the southernmost portion of Tomball ISD to Tomball West High School. I understand that did ruffle some feathers and cause some questions about the logic behind that, but I will tell you the primary driver was to keep those main neighborhoods at Tomball Memorial. And again, it did provide a greater balance utilization between the high schools. It did, again, the pain points here, which we did hear about, the longer commute. And we did actually have staff drive that, and it was consistently between 19 and 23 minutes from the Lakewood area to west. I know you may have received some email or data to the contrary. I cannot speak to the routes individuals took. Looking at the main popular routes that individuals would take, It was between 19 and 23 minutes to get from the Lakewood area to Tomball West High School. So again, longer commutes for the neighborhoods that I mentioned here. And then with this change, it did have a lower initial enrollment for Tomball West High School. Previously, I mentioned we had the enrollment up to 1,800. This dropped it down to about 1,500 students at opening. And so again, one of the pain points from the district standpoint was underutilization of Tomball West High School. I know there were some questions about this. I could continue on, but Dr. Pratt specifically, I know you mentioned understanding this idea of Telge, and I just want to pause here to see if that sufficiently answered your
It
question.
does. Keep going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right, here we go. Plan 3, we did put this out before the listening tours. This was a hybrid of Plan 1 and 2 based on our survey feedback that we did read those responses. It did prioritize reduced travel time, neighborhood unity, keeping specific neighborhoods together. Although we didn't achieve necessarily where they wanted to go, we tried to keep individuals together. Specifically, there was an effort to keep Lakes at North Point and Enclave together. Unfortunately, in Plan 3, we were not able to keep them at Tomball Memorial. We'll take a look at Plan 4, how we were able to achieve that. But we had more consistency when you talk about student impact. We were able to reduce how many students were actually being changed from campuses to campus, so it was achieve that guidepost of family and student impact. So again, some of the pain points: proximity for the neighborhoods around Tomball Memorial. Plan 2 was really the only plan that we were able to come up with that had the 4 big neighborhoods. I'll just call them Hayden Lakes and associated neighborhoods at Tomball Memorial. So you do see Hayden Lakes and also the Lakes at North Point and the Enclave, Copper Bend, villages at Indian Trails still going west. There was also some concern with Plan 3 with the movement of some of the neighborhoods, specifically at the elementary level. I know I'm showing you the high school plan here. There were some concerns with the reduction of neighborhood students or quote unquote general ed students that were not students not in the two-way dual language program. And so there was a concern that we'd be reducing the population even more of the neighborhood feel and increasing the percentage by default there, the two-way dual language program. And again, with Plan 3 and in Plan 4, there's a lower enrollment for Tomball West High School. In Plan 4, Plan 4 was a modification that we created after the listening tours, and that's one of the main highlights here. We were able to move Lakes at North Point and the Enclave into Tomball Memorial. The drawback on that, if you will, there are 2 years where Tomball Memorial slightly breaches capacity, but it would actually be lower than what it's going to be in the next 2 years. And so I think it goes right over 3,000, 3,071, 3,079, and then in 29 or 2930, it goes back down to 3,000. And so we're seeing a downward trend after that. And so we felt confident at having heard the community at the listening tour loud and clear that we could accommodate Lakes at North Point and the Enclave into Memorial. Unfortunately, there was not a way without dividing up neighborhoods. And although Copper Bend and villages at Indian Trails have 2 different names, they are essentially one neighborhood. They share amenities, all of the things that Dr. Schindewolf mentioned about social circles and family impact. We were not able to move both, and so without it sending Tomball Memorial over capacity. And so in an effort to keep neighborhoods and social circles together, these neighborhoods, Copper Bend and villages of Indian Trails, cannot be accommodated at Memorial. Again, as I mentioned in the previous plans, except Plan 2, proximity concerns for neighborhoods around Memorial. There was a reduction in the students and not in the two-way dual language, and again, lower enrollment for Tomball West. So based on feedback from our last survey, based on feedback from the committee, we were able to make some slight modifications to Plan 4, we did not call this Plan 5, and we could say it's semantics, but it were minor changes. But also in the previous Plan 1, 2, and 3 of 4, we asked for feedback. And so at that point, there were no other plans for community surveys. There were no other opportunities to sort of alter this. And so it was just a revision of Plan 4. So Plan 4 revised. This was based on, again, also the majority, not the majority, it was 49%, a large increase of percentage of our district preferred Plan 4. And so, as Dr. Schindewolf mentioned, Plan 1 and 2 were eliminated. Plan 3 had 14% versus 49%. So we used Plan 4 as the basis for the revisions and presented that to the committee at the last committee meeting. Again, this did prioritize keeping neighborhoods together. There was a higher district utilization and balanced enrollment between the high schools. Some of the pain points, as I mentioned, the neighborhoods surrounding Tomball Memorial. We did make an adjustment to keep some of the neighborhoods that we mentioned in the two-way dual language program. So we have Rosehurst, Timberlake, and Rosewood Hill. We had 3 neighborhoods right here where I'm hovering. We were able to put them back into Rose Hill. They're already currently in the Rose Hill zone, so that actually decreased the number of students that were actually shifting to a new campus. But just like anything else, when you think you're doing meeting the needs or the concerns of some individuals, you hear the flip side of that and saying, hey, we would prefer to go to Grand Oaks. And so that was one of the communities that Dr. Schindewolf mentioned, that we did some selective polling to find out what is the pulse of the community there. We were having individuals say, everyone in my neighborhood wants to say. So instead of just taking one person's voice in their email, we sent a poll out to all the individuals in that neighborhood that had students, and we asked them to use their voice and let us know, not as the deciding factor or the sole determinant, but as another data point to make this decision. So the flip side of that, you saw if there was not enough two-way dual language. Now there are folks saying here's programmatic concerns for staying at Rose Hill because they're not in the two-way dual language program. I did hear and speak to several parents, even parents on the committee, that said, I don't have my children in the two-way dual language program, and so I may have had some initial reservations about, being a general ed student. But if you choose to participate and be engaged, because it's not like this is only a two-way dual language party or only a two-way dual language school, if you put yourself out there to engage and to volunteer and to be on the PTO, you feel very much included. If, like anything else, if you choose to be excluded or not to participate, well, then you might feel excluded, or you might not know that there is an awesome event happening. But there is definitely an opportunity to folks to engage and, if you will, to get out what you put in. And so with this plan also, there was slightly lower utilization. Tomball West High School does open with a little over 1,200 students, but you'll quickly see in the enrollment with the growth happening out west, by 2030-31, we are within a range of the other 2 high schools. And so we're seeing that the growth is happening out west, and we're not concerned. There's some initial pain point for the district about having lower enrollment, but that does dissipate over time. So from Plan 4 revised, as I mentioned, there were, I'm going to go into just a little bit of detail of some of the changes that we made from Plan 4 to Plan 4 revised. These were the 3 neighborhoods that I mentioned in the Rose Hill zone that we, again, here's the current boundary line. The orange shows that there was going to be a change from Rose Hill to Grand Oaks. There was committee requests and feedback to say, let's take a look at that. And so we were able to shift these neighborhoods back into Rose Hill to have more of an equitable balance between the two-way dual language program and our general ed students. But as a result of that, our enrollment at Rose Hill then became a little too high, and so we had to make some adjustments. And then on the flip side of that, Grand Oaks enrollment was a little bit too low. And so what you see here in the little oval shape, this is the northern portion of Amira. It's a large subdivision in the southwest part of the district. It is divided by this line here. This is a planning area. This is a main street that kind of divides some of the southern portion and the northern portion of the district. Many of the homes in this northern part are under construction now, so we don't have a lot of students in there to feel like, oh, we're severing lifelong friends. This neighborhood is relatively new, and there are only, I believe, 13 or 16 students currently there in elementary. So we felt there is sufficient growth that's happening in there that would be able to populate some of the growth at Grand Oaks. And so you see elementary adjustment from Rose Hill, Grand Oaks, and West Elementary. The West Elementary goes from moving from this yellow color back to the orange, from West to Grand Oaks. In order to bring some balance there, because again of the increase to the Rose Hill enrollment by bringing those 3 neighborhoods back into Rose Hill, we had to make some adjustments on the northern portion of the Rose Hill Decker Prairie line. And so you see here in the box, this is Bridal Creek, Sonoma Valley, not necessarily large subdivisions, but homes out there. And so we initially had moved these individuals, students back into the Rose Hill zone, the Decker Prairie zone here. Also, this is Spring Creek Apartments, an associated area there. And so we moved those from Plan 4 being at Rose Hill. We moved those back to Decker Prairie where they currently are. You may have also been hearing from some certain individuals. Trustee Shield mentioned, hey, if you get a couple neighbors to piece their land together to say, hey, I'm done with keeping up with this acreage out here, they choose to sell their land and it becomes a large subdivision. Well, we have that going on here, and that is, if you go back to the early slides of the presentation, the Decker Prairie zone, having the yellow highlighted cells, is driven by a lot of the new construction that's happening here. The northern portion of this tip is Rose Hill Lake and Decker Farms, and so you have 2 associated neighborhoods, very large. We tried, just like we tried with Hayden Lakes and associated neighborhoods, to keep them at Decker Prairie. Unfortunately, when we kept this neighborhood or these 2 neighborhoods in this current zone or this current development at Decker Prairie, it kept them over capacity. The flip side to that, this is a relatively new subdivision, and so it's not like, not to diminish, them purchasing a home to be in that zone. It's not like an entrenched mentality. I've been here. I've always been at Rose Hill Lake, not 2 lakes, just one, and so we felt like this is still relatively new. We can keep them at Rose Hill, and unfortunately, there was just no way to accommodate keeping them there. And so we did align. I'm showing you elementary, but we did make these changes to the intermediate, junior high, and high school plans. And so in Plan 4, they were heading westward. When we moved them to Decker Prairie, they would be facing towards the Tomball High School feeder pattern. And so we did make that change. After we did that, Plan 4 revised, we did hear community feedback via emails and individuals on the committee to say, hey, individuals that live out here in the Bridal Creek, Sonoma Valley area where I'm hovering over, they wanted to go to West. And if you take a look at their commute, this is Decker Prairie, Cypress, Rose Hill. It's a very clean line with the expansion there. It's actually reduced their commute going from to Tomball High School to Tomball West. So we had individuals to say, hey, I want to go to West. Can you put me back? And so, just like I mentioned earlier, we didn't take 1 or 2 emails as the voice of the community. We polled this area. The majority, and this was a large majority, I don't recall that off the top of my head, large majority elected their preference to go to Tomball West. And so in the recommended plan that you do see, we did change this area, again, Bridal Creek, Sonoma Valley residents, back to the west feeder pattern. They would stay at Decker Prairie, but then they would go, so it would be at Decker Prairie, then they'd go to West Intermediate, Grand Lakes, and Tomball West High School. Some other final adjustments from Plan 4 to Plan 4 Revise. This also is an example of when we get guideposts or some of the guiding principles to be somewhat in conflict with each other. And so this is the Wildwood zone that I'm hovering over here. These are some of the original, I believe, Oakcrest, Wildwood at Oakcrest neighborhoods. We felt like in order to keep sort of the trade-off, if you will, of Enclave and the lakes at North Point to stay at Memorial, we needed to provide, they were shifting to Willow Creek Elementary. So you can kind of see that. They currently go to Wildwood, but the little teal color would show that they were making a shift to the Willow Creek zone. That actually allowed us, in the name of proximity, individuals right around Wildwood to go to Wildwood. So you see 60 students, 25 students. We were able to send almost 100 students, 85 students back to Wildwood that are currently at Grand Oaks. And so this is where proximity and family and student impact sort of rub up against each other. We receive feedback from many individuals to say, we are one, although there's 4 large subdivisions here, we've grown up with these kids, we've gone to the same schools together. If you're going to send them, Hayden Lakes and associated neighbors out west to Tomball West, we want to do that as well. We would prefer to make the longer commute. We'll take the sacrifice on that, but we would like to stay with a larger group. And so we were able to accommodate that. With that change of those 85 students, we were able to bring back Lakes at North Point in the enclave. So again, that meant a reduction of the number of students impacted by a change. And so that was a change that from Plan 4 revised, that is the same in our recommended plan. Some of the final adjustments here that I want to highlight for you. There were several comments at the listening tour and the surveys about the little neighborhood that I'm highlighting over here. This is the enclave at Hayden Lakes. It's a one-way in, one-way out, facing right towards Oak Crest. And so there was a request to, if all possible, because of the way it faces, because of the commute, to prioritize them to stay at Memorial. And because, again, the small number of students that were impacted, we're talking 14 students, 2 students. We did include this new subdivision at current little plot that's currently being built now. There's no students there, but we were able to align these to Willowwood and to Tomball Memorial to have a consistent feeder pattern. And so that was one of the final adjustments in the plan. So I continue to go on the recommended plan, but I do want to highlight the phases of implementation based on these plans. Phase 1, which takes place next year, impacts elementary. Not all of elementary. The northeast part of Tomball ISD, the Creekside area, is not impacted here, nor are there changes to intermediate, junior high, or high school. So only the campuses listed here. Elementary campuses are being impacted next year with Phase 1. That is with the opening of West Elementary. In Phase 2, we do have opening of West Intermediate, and so that will impact all of the intermediate campuses, minus intermediate number 5, or the Creekside Park addition, the Creekside 5th graders, and the Creekside Park Junior High 6th graders. At that time, we will also implement our junior high plan. Although there are no junior highs that are part of this, there are changes to the junior high boundaries. In Phase 2, there are no other elementary changes or implementations, nor to high school. When we get to Phase 3, we're in 26-27. This is the configuration of K4. So we have an aligned configuration. Dr. Pratt, as you asked the question earlier, that will be achieved in Phase 3. I'll come back to I'll just tell you what the STAR means here. You've also probably received some commentary about why are we changing again? 2 years ago, you rezoned me to Timber Creek, and now you're putting me back to Creekview. And I just want to highlight for the board, and for anyone watching, when we made that change 2 years ago, we knew that change was going to be temporary. We knew there was going to be a relief campus that was going to open in 26-27. The rezoning was a distribution of students. We had sufficient capacity within the 3 campuses, but we needed to equal them out. I believe Creekview was at 115% utilization. Timber Creek was like at 92, and Creekside Forest was at 85. And so we were able to spread the love, if you will, of being comfortably snug across the 3 campuses, knowing that was going to be temporary. With this change, the committee also felt, since we are providing sufficient relief by removing all 5th grade students from those 3 campuses, that this was the time to create a more permanent zone for those campuses. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we were considering this redistribution of students, you heard a lot about proximity. I can ride my bike. I know several of you took a tour out there and saw the number of bikes and the individuals traveling out there. So what we were able to do is say, okay, if that was a concern, let's bring, primarily we're talking about the Tiburon neighborhood, let's bring them back to Creekview so that they can ride their bikes. They don't have to cross Kirkendall. And then there's going to be a piece of the district, Fairway Farms, everything south of Huffsmith near Burroughs Park. That was going to be impacted with the relief school. So that was the reason why we didn't move them in the first place, because we'd be moving them twice. And one of those would have been theoretically outside of the Creekside area. And so what we have here, and the reason why I kind of set that up, is there's about a 30 student difference between the students at Tiburon. I believe there's 168 students, elementary age students in Tiburon, and there's about 134 students, and I'm just going to call it Fairway Farms and associated neighborhoods that are in that Huffsmith, south of Huffsmith area. And so in theory, although there's a 30 student difference, it's very similar. We call it almost, we could swap those. So if there is appetite, when we get to 26-27, so in the 25-26 school year, what we did with selective polling, we could specifically ask the individuals in Tiburon, because there are some folks that if we were to ask right now, they are not going to be impacted by this, right? So when we get to 25-26, we can do another selective polling of the individuals that are currently going to Tiburon and those in the Fairway Farms and south of Huffsmith, and ask for their opinion on this as another data point based on proximity and travel lines. The current plan, I believe, creates a more permanent solution for that area. But if there is an appetite for switching it or leaving it as is, we can also do that. I didn't want to cloud that with making the change now because, again, as I mentioned in phase one, that portion of the district is not impacted. And I think that we can approve phase one, the elementary plan, independent of anything that's happening out in the Creekside area. And so I put that star there as a talking point to highlight that for you. I know you've received several emails surrounding that concern. During that time also in the phase three, we'll have the configuration of the junior high and intermediate to be the Creekside fifth graders and the Creekside Park Junior High sixth graders. That would also bring Creekside Park aligned in the 7th and 8th. I know there's still a lot of details still yet to be worked out with that logistically. But then again, high school, to reiterate what Dr. Shinawolf mentioned early, 11th and 12th grade would remain unaffected. And associated siblings, there's the potential for the sibling transfer, and we would have the new zones for Tomball, Tomball Memorial, and Tomball West. Okay, before I get into the recommended plans, or we're almost there, so I will pause for questions here in a second. So we have, here is the recommended plans. You also have those for you in large format there in front of you. We have our recommended plan, noting again some of the areas of change right here around the Canyon Point areas. I believe there's 35 students. There's 5 students expanding in the Wildwood zone. There is as I mentioned earlier, a decrease in the Lakewood population. We increased that capacity by adding this little, there's an apartment complex here to create a more permanent long-term elementary boundary for them. Overall, when you look at all of the changes that I've highlighted throughout the plan, there are 1,080 students that are impacted by this zone. So a student that is changing from one school to the next in their elementary career, if you will. I've excluded students that are going from 4th grade to 5th grade because they'd be changing campuses anyway. There are a total of 8,647 elementary students. So when you consider 1,080, that is approximately 12% of the district's elementary population that will be impacted by phase one implementation of the elementary boundaries. This is primarily, this would be our current kindergarten through 3rd grade students that would be impacted by a potential move somewhere in there. If they're kindergarten or 3rd grade, they would be impacted. Obviously, 4th grade would be heading into the intermediate school change. And so this will be the elementary plan as described. Here, with that, the correlated enrollment, proposed enrollment, projected forecast for the elementary plan. Previously, you saw the Grand Oaks zone completely yellow. We were able to knock that down significantly with the opening of West High School. But you may say, hey, 500 students, that's not enough. You'll quickly see over the years, 581, 670, 47, 727, we're already at 926 students by 3031, which is very much in line with the district utilization of the district. So again, answering the question of why out west, you're going to see Grand Oaks right here as a prime example of that growth driving out west. There was also some highlighted cells at Tomball Elementary. We're able to provide relief with Tomball Elementary. We do have long-term still, when we look at future growth or future potential bond or a need for a new school, the Rose Hill, Decker Prairie area is still, and in addition, although we did provide relief to Tomball Elementary, we can include that in a little triad, we're going to need some relief provided to those three campuses. And you might say, well, you moved some campuses from Tomball, from Decker Prairie to Rose Hill. Could you put those back? All that would do was shift the cells from Rose Hill to Decker Prairie much earlier. And so that lets us know down in the 28, 29, or even 30, we're going to need a potential relief campus out there to address the growth between Decker Prairie, Rose Hill, and Tomball Elementary. Again, this is an aligned K-4 enrollment. It shows you what your current enrollment is at our elementary campuses. All right, so this brings us to phase 2 implementation. This is our intermediate plan. The big change here, obviously the big yellow swath here is West Intermediate. The Oakcrest zone remains unchanged minus this piece here. This is Canyon Gate. Previously, they have been at North Point, so we're including Canyon Gate back into North Point. North Point has one of the larger capacities of the intermediate campuses, so this does provide a little bit more permanency of their zone and has greater utilization. This does drastically reduce the overcapacity issues that we're going to see, that we're seeing now and next year at Tomball Intermediate. And again, unchanged out here, the intermediate with our proposal out there. You see the associated forecast report. Good news, there's no yellow, so that's just a little quick sign that we're bringing all of the campuses under capacity. This does provide long-term relief across the district. There may be some minor adjustments, but by and large, we do have a more permanent zone for our intermediate campuses based on the capacity that we're adding with West Intermediate and Creekside addition. Here's our junior high. Again, there are no junior highs that are being built, but an effort to align some of the campuses, more consistent feeder pattern. If you essentially are going to North Point and going to Willowwood and to Tomball Memorial, we try to put those neighborhoods together. And so this is the Canyon Point zone essentially going back to Willowwood. When we opened Grand Lakes Junior High, there was a decision to include this to provide further relief to Willowwood. But unfortunately, the flip side to that was we had an imbalance between Grand Lakes and Willowwood. Currently, I think there's 800 or so students, under 900 at Willowwood, and there are over 1,000 at Grand Lakes. So this brings them back into a little bit more balance, about 1,000 each or slightly over. So that's the main difference you're going to see here. You see the green line showing us what the current Grand Lakes zone is. As we've crept up the Rose Hill zone, that will really be part of the west feeder pattern. This aligns cleanly with the feeder pattern of Rose Hill of West. And so this, again, alignment with the rest of the plans. Again, the relief to Tomball Junior High is similar to the relief and the identical feeder pattern or configuration of Tomball Intermediate. So you'll see here, the number of students here, actually, and I didn't give you the number of intermediate students, so I'm going to quickly just go back to that. There, with the intermediate plan, there are 212 students that would be impacted from their 5th to 6th grade year. There are 3,567 students, so that would be 6% of the district intermediate population being changed. And so again, that just shows we're trying to reduce the amount of change. The flip side to that, even though that's a smaller number, if you are within that 212, you are with your neighborhood, you are with the same friend group that have been at some of the elementary and the campuses, your elementary plan if you're going to intermediate. With the junior high plan, we had 208 students out of 3,509. Junior high students, that is also 6% of the junior high population that would be affected in phase 2 implementation. Okay, moving along. We're here down the stretch with high school. This was the biggie that we kind of talked about earlier. This is phase 3. We have our high school plan. The big change here is those individuals in the 4 neighborhoods that I mentioned earlier with Copper Bend and Villages of Indian Trails going to Tomball West High School. Already in some of the feedback that we received, these neighborhoods are already in a westward movement going to either Grand Oaks currently, next West Elementary. They're already going to Grand Lakes Junior High. You may have heard we did some selective polling of Villages of Wildwood, I believe, asking them, are you sure that you want to stay, and it's a loaded question, do you want to stay at Memorial because your children would be some of the only ones going to West, to Oak Crest, and then to Grand Lakes that would be going back to Memorial? And 93% said we understand that. So part of it was we wanted them to acknowledge that you're going to be in the minority of the students going from Grand Lakes to Tomball Memorial. But again, there are I think over 100 students in that, so we're not going to have less than 10 or a small number of students making that transition. And so the big change here is right around Tomball Memorial, and obviously the creation of the Tomball West feeder pattern or the zone. We do have 333 students out of 6,642. That is approximately 5% of our high school population. That would be our current 6th and 7th graders in school right now that would be impacted. As I mentioned earlier, we do have, when we moved Lakes at North Point and the Enclave back into Tomball Memorial, we do have a slight uptick of enrollment at Memorial, but you see in the year 2030, 31, a gradual decrease back down to within capacity. And so with that is an overview of the recommended plans. And we're almost here for questions over the final piece, but just for sake of discussion and what is being asked for you to vote on tomorrow, we're asking you to approve the Tomball ISD elementary school boundaries effective for the 24-25 school year. And because our community indicated that it was important that they know what is coming, we ask that you also endorse the new plans for intermediate, junior high, and high school, knowing that each year we would come back before that phase is implemented. We'd come back to make sure that data, that there were no other changes that need to be made. I know there's already one little area out in the northwest area that we talked about that may potentially be changed back, but we would bring that for your approval and review next year. And so with that, again, thank you. I know that was a lot of information, and I'll pause for any final questions.
Any questions? I know he covered probably any questions you might have had.
What was the percentage of the specific samples to Rose Hill of those who wanted to go to Grand Oaks versus those who wanted to
It was
stay at Rose Hill?
53% of those that were polled indicated their preference to stay at Rose Hill.
Thank you. Other questions?
So I'm going to try to order my questions in terms of the school format that we've got. So I'll kind of start elementary and then kind of work my way to high school.
Got it.
On just a comment and a question, I really think for Rose Hill, the same question exists for me, indifferent of the DZR work, the purpose of that campus and how we're going to address the general ed population versus the two-way dual language. We don't need to address it here, but in a future agenda item, I do think as we continue to build out what the purpose of that campus is, so that those in that community understand the purpose of that campus. And so that
And
resonates with me.
I can briefly do that. We can continue to discuss it as well. But it has and will continue to be an elementary campus with a strong program that happens to be dual language, which wouldn't be any different than a program that has a very strong special education population or any other. That has been the focus, and that will continue to be the focus. So I'm thankful that we listened to the parents that had some concerns about movement and whatnot. So I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Okay. I would like us to continue
Sure.
putting that in front of us so that we are making sure that that is truly.
The focus,
Yeah.
right.
So Martha, real quick, just to drill down on that a little bit, right now, what is the percentage of the dual language at Rose Hill?
It is a high percentage. I don't have the exact number. I'm not sure who from staff would.
Is dual language. If we utilize this plan in 4 years or 5 years, what would that percentage be?
It drops to 50% in 3 years, and then when Rose Hill capacity, or when Rose Hill enrollment goes up to 900, it decreases below 50%.
Okay, so Michael, does that kind of
That
help
helps.
you?
That helps,
get-
yeah. That you asked the question that I probably should have asked, so, yeah, thank you. The communities of Copper Bend and Indian Trails, I want to understand their movement through time. If you could humor me and understand what the elementary school is, or schools, what that then maps to at the intermediate, the junior high, and then high school. I'm intrigued as to what ended up happening there with those two communities.
Okay,
It's
I'm-
at the intersection of Spring Cypress and.
So I'm
Grant.
hovering over those two neighborhoods now, and so in the recommended plan, their elementary campus is unchanged. They will remain at Wildwood Elementary,
Okay,
and they would stay at Oak Crest where they are currently zoned. So there's no movement there. They will continue to Grand Lakes where they are currently going. So there's already a westward movement out there. The only change really is, along with these other neighborhoods here, going to Tomball West High School. And so, their path in this area, there are multiple avenues of travel. You can take, Grant to Cypress Rose Hill over to Jurgen and hit Mushki, or you can take Spring Cypress to Louetta to Mushki, or you could go up to 99 via Telge and exit Mushki there. So there are 3 clean travel lines for individuals in this sort of southern portion to hit West High School.
you
Or the West
anticipated,
Complex.
you anticipated where I was going.
Yeah.
So the 19 to 23 minutes that you described, can I apply that to the Indian Trails and Copper
Yes.
Bend? Okay.
Yes.
Got it. In the polling, what you had said, the response was those communities are good with all the elementary, intermediate, junior high, and high school, based on the poll that you took.
We did not do a selective polling of those neighborhoods because, again, most of their feeder pattern is unchanged from what they're currently experiencing. Really, the driver and the data point was there's not sufficient capacity to put those two neighborhoods without splitting. And again, there were some issues with splitting the neighborhoods and the whole consistency with neighborhood unity. And so in the plan iteration, they stayed at Tomball West High School.
Okay. A footnote, you on the Tiburon community mapping up in the Creekside area, I would make sure that any communication that we have is strongly footnoting that, or it's highlighting that, because that community is sensitive. And I want to make sure that, because you mentioned it here tonight, that is something that, we're not starring and we're communicating, hey, 3 years from now, this is what you can expect. So that community, that community suffered quite a bit back during the floods, and so it's not just the rezoning or moving of children, it's the whole community, right? So the more we can communicate there, I think it'll be strong.
Okay, thank you.
I have just kind of keep going here. The North Point Intermediate, up in the upper right, so the north and east portion of that. Can you describe that a little? What is that again for me? What's the road that's north of that?
This is Canyon Gate. This would be 99.
Okay, so 99 down to, what is the gold boundary on the bottom of that section? What is that road?
I don't have North Point Boulevard.
Okay, so that's North Point. I missed that. What was it?
Yeah, so got an assist from the crowd. Thank y'all.
Okay. So that is up to 99, down to North Point. So those students previously have been mapped to Oak Crest Intermediate?
Yes.
Okay. Any reaction from that community in terms of that mapping?
There were some individuals that indicated that they would rather stay at Oak Crest. Now, the driver behind that, most of the individuals going to Oak Crest are heading west. And so I don't want to say a little bit of a concession. This was in an effort to align feeder patterns. And so this neighborhood will also stay at Willowwood. This would also be going to Tomball Memorial. And so one, capacity, North Point has higher capacity, and so we were able to provide a more permanent zone and proper utilization there, and also an alignment between the feeder patterns to be more consistent.
Okay, and that's probably a shorter commute
Yes.
to that intermediate North Point than it is to
Yes,
Oak Crest?
there is, I believe, a back entrance here that spits out near North Point Intermediate.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Churn. I worry a little bit about churn, and I can't pinpoint in any of this where a student might have attended Willow Creek Elementary, that then they were mapped to Grand Oaks Elementary, and now we're back to Willow Creek. Do we have examples where there's some churn? And what's the sizing of that? And I know it's in here somewhere, but where's that going to surface? I'm going to pick on Indian Trails just for a second. That community, which is why I was focused there, has been rezoned to
Multiple
Willow
times.
Creek, to Lakewood, back to Willow Creek. Have we taken a look at that and try to limit the amount of churn that's going to happen in one elementary child's, 4-year, 5-year term?
Absolutely, and you picked one, I would say in the district, that those two neighborhoods that had more churn than others. I do believe they've gone to Lakewood, they've been to Willow Creek, they've been to Wildwood and back. So it was important that we, one, kept them together, but individuals in Copper Bend or Indian Trails, we're keeping them at the elementary level, intermediate, junior high, so there should be less of a churn there for those students. I would say that was a big area of focus. So I don't believe that you will find instances where there is that churn that you mentioned.
Okay. If that does come up, I would ask for your empathy in some sort of grandfathering, even at the elementary level, where it's possible, to limit that.
We can consider it and look at what
That's
the
why I asked.
numbers would look like.
That's why I asked,
Absolutely.
right? I don't know of those based on what you've said here today, but I would ask for some consideration there.
Sure, absolutely.
I have a couple more here. On the junior high zone, looking at Grand Oaks versus Willowwood Junior High. Keeping in mind, I'm a product of the Bob Frost era of Willowwood Junior High. Can you talk to me about your cursor to the left, if you slide it to the left, down in the eastern part of what would be Grand Oaks, eastern, right there.
This
Up a little
is the
bit.
Lakes at North Point and the Enclave.
Okay. That's going to Willowwood.
Yes, and that's where they currently go. That's where they're attending right now.
Okay, go just due north of that in the Grand Oaks zone, right there.
This is the neighborhood that I mentioned, the villages or the lakes at Wildwood. This is one of the only groups that is going to go to Grand Lakes that will come back to Memorial. And so we specifically asked that group. You may have received some emails asking that we were doing a bait and switch at the last minute. That was actually not what we were doing. We just wanted to make sure that they understood they would be one of the only groups from Grand Lakes going to Tomball Memorial, but they definitely indicated Tomball Memorial was where they wanted to be.
When you look at the the most eastern part of that Grand Oaks, right where your cursor was, come back to the right. I'm looking at the most eastern boundary that you were just in. So
Here?
Yeah, right there. Right, the most east. What is that? Most eastern north-south running boundary. What is that?
Are you referencing this here or
North to south. Your cursor to the right.
here?
No, you were that right there, right up.
Okay.
Yes, sir. What is the most eastern boundary? Just stop your cursor for a second. Slide it to the left slightly. Slide it up slightly. It's right there. Running north to south on that cursor's axis, what is that boundary?
That is North Point Boulevard. And that is the current Willowwood boundary. And so what we've done again is just expand that to create some of that alignment between the feeder patterns. And so all of these individuals that are at Willowwood will go to Tomball Memorial. And so that was an effort to reduce, I'm not sure if I'm using the churn right in this case, but the students staying together in an appropriate feeder pattern. And so there was an increase to the Willowwood zone, one, to bring balance between Grand Lakes and Willowwood, but also to align students that will be going to Memorial, that they would be in a more consistent feeder pattern with Willowwood.
Okay. Proximity-wise, what is the difference between the commute to Willowwood Junior High at that spot versus the commute to Grand Lakes Junior High? Is it about the same? Slightly more to Grand Lakes? What's your sense?
It's a shorter commute. It's a shorter commute to Willowwood than to Grand Lakes.
Okay. And you're saying that is our boundary today?
The green line here is the current boundary.
Okay. What we're expanding is north of that, up to 99.
Yeah, so this would
Okay.
be
I got
a little bit more than the Canyon Point zone.
I got it. Okay. Shifting to the high school level. I'm going to tell you, I understand all of this. I just don't like opening a high school at 43% capacity. You know, we paused as a board when, yeah.
Correct.
it's
Two grades, and
grades.
also, that wasn't our initial, but that was based on the feedback and the concerns we got from the community.
That's a great point, John. So when we have 4 grades at Tomball West, that's in the 27, 28 timeframe?
28,
We open in
29.
26, so it would be, yeah, 28,
Okay.
29.
So we'll be knocking on the door of 55, 60% capacity? Is that right?
In 28,
When we
29.
have a full 4-year, we have 9th through 12th operating on that campus. What will be the capacity, percentage? Is it 1743, Stephen, 1926?
The full
So,
configuration will be almost
1926.
2,000, so it'll be 2/3 full.
Okay. Okay. So we paused to evaluate Creekside Park Junior High at 60% before we opened that, right? You weren't in the seat, but
No, but I heard a lot about it.
yeah. So if I remember our CFO emeritus, he was very concerned about opening up a campus at 60%. Do we have that concern?
It's always a concern, but I think it is, when you look at the big picture, it is the right thing to do moving forward.
It's what I mentioned as a pain point from a district standpoint. We'd be opening Tomball West High School with a lower utilization. The flip side to that is moving individuals that we've heard from to say we want to stay at Memorial, we're closer there. And so that's why I kind of kept highlighting the underutilization of West as a trade-off between proximity. And so that's a little bit of where the guideposts kind of rub up against each other.
Yeah. Would there be a scenario, I'm going to use my words carefully here, for an intra-district open enrollment for Tomball West to shift some capacity for those that elected to go to Tomball West, provide their own transportation, all of that, to shift to Tomball West to improve the capacity and optimize capacity at your other two high school, your comprehensive high schools.
I mean, that's always a possibility.
Okay.
It's something we can discuss
Yep.
in the future.
So Michael, I want to drill down though on what you said, because that's an area that I kind of zeroed in on as well. I guess I'm a little concerned where we keep the capacity at Memorial pretty constant and high.
Correct.
And we've got the lower utilization at West. So while one solution Michael came up with is the intra-district open enrollment.
Right, if the family chooses to do that.
Yeah, I just wonder, maybe we really do need to look at the boundary lines
Well,
a
that
little
goes,
more.
that goes back to that goes back to initially what was recommended. We listened to the community, and that was part of the Plan 4, because you were getting the emails, and there was a concern about we couldn't possibly go to this school, and so we have to have it one way or the other. We either,
Exactly.
we can't have it all.
I would say that
unfortunately.
the community that we would look at are villages of North Point
We-
and the
we can
Enclave.
easily get it to
And we
capacity.
heard from them loud and clear at the listening tours, and I know you were inundated by the emails, but those would be the first ones that I would suggest, and that's based on also Plan 3.
Yeah, just trying to honor everybody's wishes, plus that was, again, I think one of the top things you listed as a pain point. Capacity utilization is always important, but it comes at a price.
But again, with the westward expansion, it does increase. So we'll see the population, it will increase over
The
time.
increase, right.
And it
Tina,
could
you-
increase quicker than what's projected.
It could.
So
There
if
is a
we
lot
could
of land
open
out
Might be a
there.
monitor.
At a higher
Just thinking
capacity,
an easy way to solve.
Whereas if we switch
is to
people-
provide elective.
Prematurely.
we could maybe have to switch them back
It's only for.
Correct.
a 4-year
because
period of time.
West could be
And we could get
having
takers.
capacity problems as well.
Yes.
On the question of capacity, you see a couple of our junior highs built out for 1,500 kids, 1,100 kids, 1,200 kids, and in this campus built out for 3 and 5 and 6 years in, based on the numbers we know. It's all based on what we know, right? I know over in Creekside, wasn't there a whole development that wasn't known until kind of last minute? We already had a property and they was going to be a retirement community. It became a neighborhood,
Yes.
Yes.
right? And that kind of thing happens. So just so many balls in the air. And this whole process, you throw in the Creekside experience and process there, I just keep thinking there's got to be, are there other ways to do this? This is always so complicated and difficult. Is there a different way districts, this is big picture, way down the road, thinking of the way campuses get developed, how schools are built out. There's a conversation about that, because if this is the most painful thing that happens, and proximity is the most important thing the community is concerned about, they've made that clear, are there things we're not seeing and dreaming about down the road in the way that we plan for our campuses? I just want, put that tickler. Yeah, philosophically, are there better ways to do this rather than overbuild, underutilize, wrangling of hands and frustration, fiscally responsible? Are there other ways to do this? Let's just think that out. Maybe let's go have a beer and talk about it.
Here.
So the underutilization piece is something that I'm, concerned about, but I know it's because you're listening to the community, and I want to convey my gratitude to the district's interest in fine-tuning and fine-tuning and fine-tuning. I just really, really appreciate that. I'd like to understand if there are any students, based on this capacity question, that are being moved strategically because of needing to fill a campus versus being moved because of overcrowding. I'd like to know that number if there is a number. Again, other neighborhood, they're being launched to this campus because we need to get more butts and seats over there and satisfy all the costs of that school.
Every student for West Intermediate, West Junior High, and West High School. Because we have to fill the school.
Not just fill
No,
the
no,
school,
no,
but
but
there are
that- no, no.
30, there are going to be 3,700
Yeah,
students
it's
at
the
Memorial.
overcapacity at Tomball Memorial is the driver in that.
Yeah, but I mean, but you said you want to know the number of every
No.
students being moved to fill a school.
No, well, okay, the other side of the question, the driver in my question is, are there kids being moved just to fill a school? Not because of an overcrowding issue. That's a big difference. We're moving a kid because we need to put a kid in that school versus we're moving a kid because we have a lot of overcrowding at that campus. Does that make sense?
I see what you're asking, but I guess it's on how you look at it. So we build schools because we have projected or current overcrowding.
Sure.
So we are filling them because we have,
No, I understand we're filling schools that, right. But I am fundamentally in disagreement with moving a kid simply to put them in a new campus versus moving a kid because we really have to move a kid. There's no other option. And I've heard you say a couple of times here, we really had no other option.
Right.
But to move this, we couldn't make it work because of overcrowding at TMHS. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I guess long-term, when you start thinking about long-term, what's the future of Tomball ISD? I know we've done a build-out of what the student population is of the district, and we're looking at over 35,000 students. And so when you factor in what is coming from a long-term, the data suggests that you do need 3 comprehensive high schools. So I understand there's some concern about underutilization or not moving students unless you have to.
Right.
Both sides of the coin. Long term, there is going to be a need. There is a need for 3 comprehensive high schools in Tomball ISD.
Let me ask about Hayden Lakes in particular, because it looks like, that they're the one group, from what I could tell, most significant number of students that are having that move at the high school level, correct?
Hayden Lakes, Oak Crest, Wildwood at Oak Crest.
And you guys surveyed that community, correct?
No.
Did not.
Their plan 2 was the plan to keep that community, those communities at Memorial. But again, that means moving the South, the Lakewood area to Tomball West. And so we did not survey them. We know that their preference would be to stay at Tomball Memorial.
Okay.
So plan 2 was that exploration of keeping those neighborhoods at Memorial.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Only thing I really had, go back to the high school, please. The
Forecast.
enrollment. Okay, so basically, we're not building another high school down Memorial, so we're still back at capacity problems. So that kind of concerns me right there a little bit. We're gonna be right back to capacity, but we already got some emails about kids in athletics. So are the West kids gonna be? We're gonna be all 3 Tomball high schools gonna be in the same district with 1,000 less kids playing, or they're gonna be a division lower?
Most likely they would be in a division lower, starting out.
there are some varsity sports. You'll have individual tennis, there are some, but not all. It will be football.
I know, but between West and Memorial, that's over 1,000 kids less to fill teams out. So we're gonna have this big massive program at Memorial, and then we got tiny West trying to fill out the same team, same district, all that stuff. So it's not
No,
gonna
don't be
be
the same district. For
So
clarity, it will not
When
be.
we opened Tomball Memorial, in the first couple of years, I think Tomball was 5A at the time. Memorial was either 3A or 4A up until it kind of grew and then stepped into 5A.
Correct.
And then both graduated to 6A, and that's where we are basically today.
No, I fully realize. I mean, that's
Yeah.
my question is, we're still at capacity at Memorial. So to me, we're not being aggressive enough on the Memorial side. Get them over to Tomball or to West. So we got a plan for that.
We did have a plan for that, and that was between 3 and 4 before the concerns from the
Okay.
community.
So I don't see Memorial getting smaller. So to me, we're not being aggressive enough moving those kids over to West to equalize and all that good fun stuff. So everything else is good except for this little small component, which is a big deal.
I certainly understand that, and I would say again, this came with a Plan 4 revised. And I think maybe that's the flip comment to Mr. McLeod's comment about moving students just to fill the other school. There was a lot of commentary from community members to say there is sufficient capacity to leave our 23 students at Memorial, and so what you have here in the recommended plan is leaving as many families and students at Memorial as possible, understanding that our pain point as a district was underutilization of Tomball West for a few years, but as I highlighted in Grand Oaks, in West Intermediate, the growth is happening out west. And to Ms. Salem's point, there's a lot of land out there. There are developments that we're sure to come out there that are going to populate the campus, knowing long-term, the data does reflect that we do need 3 comprehensive high schools that will be at a similar capacity.
Stephen, maybe to help myself and Matt a little bit, maybe to help myself and Matt a little bit, could you jump to slide 12? Because I think that's a little more telling on what we're actually doing at Memorial. Slide 12, thanks. So this actually is Memorial and Tomball High School right now today.
Right now.
If nothing happens.
Correct.
So when we look at the slide we were looking at, that one assumes that West is in play for 24-25, 25-26. So I think, Matt, this one helps me a little bit more because now I'm looking at, okay, here's what Memorial is the trajectory Memorial currently is on.
Right.
So
Without opening.
Right, without opening West. So even though we may hit a quote-unquote capacity issue, Memorial's leveling out, and it's not in these numbers that we're seeing. So we are having dramatic effect. We're reducing it by 20%. So this slide's actually a little bit helpful. Remind me, what's Jeff's current enrollment today?
I believe there are 3,000. 3,140-ish. That's it.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, so if that's the plan, then I will sure encourage Dr. Pratt's, hey, if you don't want to be crowded, go to West. Go West, young man. So, and to me, if I'm playing sports, I'm going to West. I'm probably playing, I'm probably starting versus going to Memorial and sitting on the bench. So if you're a sports guy, sports parent, I would sure be emailing now saying, hey, let's do some enrollment change, because why sit on the bench and I go West and there's 1,000 less kids.
Now, this is an idea. This was just an idea, right? Thrown on the table.
It was a comment.
happened in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Intra-district enrollment.
For thought, yes,
Yeah, as a thought.
which helps. And they would want it.
The flip side is, based on my experience at Tomball Memorial, massive leadership opportunities for those that start a new high school, because you're starting in 9th and 10th grade. The step into varsity sports is a bit painful, but it's a way to build your fine arts, way to build your clubs and programs. But the first 3 years are rough, which is one of the things that I am eager to hear about, is what can you expect in your first couple of years at Tomball West, which I know you're working on. And so I'm eager to hear more about that.
And part of that, some of you may have heard this, but part of that is we have a team that has or will continue to be visiting with parents that have had students in our community go through that experience. We went from one high school to two, and now that we're expanding to another comprehensive to just learn from what we did really well and perhaps what we could have done better and want to improve upon in the future. So, good questions, good feedback for sure. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.